joining us today to talk about the dozen class action lawsuits filed in federal court over this Ohio train derailment. So, Lynn, we want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, sir.
Well, tell us, what's going on with this? How is this going to play out, and kind of set the stage for us? Do a level set of what's going on.
Okay. Well, the interesting thing about a situation like this is it brings out all types of different cases, some of which are going to have or be very meritorious. Some may not be quite as meritorious. One of the ones that we're certainly seeing, we're seeing monitoring lawsuits, lawsuits to enforce medical monitoring over fears of environmental poisoning or poisoning of people. One of the interesting law areas of law that we've seen is really what we call public. Those I think have a very good chance of succeeding, because what they've done is essentially, by this train derailment and the chemical burn that occurred afterwards, is they created a public nuisance for miles surrounding that area, even those that may not have been directly impacted by the chemicals themselves. It's a very interesting lawsuit, interesting area, and it's what they're using, for instance, in they're using the same type of theories for the lawsuits dealing with the opioids and those sort of things.
Mm. How do you expect this to play out?
What I expect to happen is, as they continue to delve into the negligence aspect of this, we already know that the base cause of this is you had wheel overheating to the point that it literally melted the axle fell off the train, and the train derailed. The hot boxes, they're there to detect those things. Apparently, they either weren't monitored or they weren't responding the way they should have been. It was very, very late before people on the train got noticed that there was even an issue. I expect that we're going to see potential changes in what they will and won't allow the train companies to do when it comes to how long to make the trains and how to better weight those trains. And when I say weight, I mean we've known for literally over 100 years that you need to keep at least 40% of the weight in the first third of the train to prevent derailments. And apparently, because of some efficiency changes that have been made in the system in many different train companies, not just Norfolk Southern, but in others as well, that is not happening as routinely as it used to. I suspect we'll see some safety changes in those areas, but I do think that they're going to be the basis for a lot of the liability lawsuits to establish damages for trespassing onto people's property, perhaps to also establish the public nuisance theory, because they need to show wrongdoing that in the basis for that public nuisance. So it's a really interesting area to watch live, as it's unfolding. There's a lot that's going to be going on, and you got to realize that in very real ways, public safety rules are written in blood, and by that I mean that typically what happens is we have a disaster, and as a result of the disaster, people look at it and they do a root cause analysis and say, what would have prevented this incident? What all would have prevented this incident? And as a result, they update the safety standards. So I expect that to happen here for sure.
Yeah. Now, what was the reason they made that decision to do that controlled burn? And do you think that was the right decision?
That's a tough call to make. It's one of those situations in which I like to refer to it as the best of very bad options. A controlled burn, you're going to pollute. You're simply going to pollute land surrounding it. You're going to pollute the air. The issue is, what are the other options? And the other option in this particular case was potentially allowing the chemicals to explode in a bomb. It's like a bomb, and that would have been far worse than a controlled burn scenario. But the controlled burn scenario still creates problems that need to be dealt with. I mean, it creates liability for, like I said, for trespassing on people's property, liability for any harm that they cause individuals or any harm they cause to that property. And as many of these other lawsuits have said, the public nuisance of depreciating values of land in the surrounding areas even.
I mean, what would you have done?
In what scenario?
Well,
what would I?
If you were the one making the decision to do a control burn or not?
In that particular situation, the control burn was probably the right thing to do. You've got to look and see. Okay, can we safely get the toxic material away from where it is? Okay, and they didn't have a way to do that, and they potentially were looking at a bomb, a massive bomb, and they could drain it and burn it, and that was the safest way to deal with the problem. It still created liability, but the liability was going to be there anyway. The question is, how bad was it going to be? An explosion situation could have been far, far worse.
Now, Erin Brockovich is kind of got involved here. She's a well-known environmental advocate. Talk about her getting involved.
Well, Erin has been involved in these toxic torts for literally for decades. She sees patterns we typically see when we have environmental disasters like this. We typically have people that are doing very dangerous, transporting large amounts of highly toxic material and that sort of thing. And they're simply not following the safety rules. What happens over time, a lot of times, is that people put profit over safety because they're placed under profit pressure to continue to be more and more profitable, and to be in the situation for these train companies to be more and more efficient. There's been a huge efficiency push that has literally taken about a third of the people off of the trains in the last 6 years. Well, when that happens, the time for doing safety inspections goes down. The amount that they can do goes down, and that many times what happens, the people that are remaining, they just sign off on things because it's kind of like, well, we're doing the best we can under the situation that we're in, but the reality is it's not safe anymore. And the safety standards that were there that needed to be enforced to prevent these type of activities don't get followed. They just don't get followed. So we have a big disaster, and then lawyers like me will come in on the back end, and we evaluate. Like I said, we do the root cause analysis, figure out what all went wrong. And if we have safety rules that are already in place that would have prevented this that weren't followed, we enforce those. That's what we will find here. We will certainly find that here. We already know we're going to find that based on the hot boxes. We know that we're going to find that based on the weighting of the train cars, how heavy they were on the back end as opposed to the front. We also know that the trains are very, very long now, which makes those weighting problems even worse. And we know that the number of people they have to even do the safety inspections has been radically decreased over time. So there's an awful lot we're going to learn here, and the issue really is the industry, the train industry. Are they going to learn the lessons, and are they going to continue to put the safety second and profits first? That's really what we're going to find out here. And this is a very big wake-up call. We are extremely lucky that we didn't have a massive loss of life in this particular train derailment. I mean, the property damage is bad enough, but we could have had a huge loss of life here. We're very lucky that didn't happen.
Now, why are you certain that you're going to find some serious, protocols and laws being broken?
Well, most of the time we do, and in a situation like this, we already know the train was probably weighted in the wrong manner. We already know that the hot boxes, the detection system that they are supposed to have on the train tracks in the miles preceding the area where the derailment happened, that those weren't necessarily working properly. That the train had to go by at least 2 or 3 of these things, with it being too hot. We know that we've actually got video now showing the train on fire, literally on fire, miles before this occurred, miles before it actually derailed. So we know that those detectors weren't working the way they should have been working.
So what does that mean when you have that, when you see that on video prior to the derailment?
What that means is, if we know that the detection boxes weren't working properly, then we have to go back and look and say, okay, was it because of the way those detection boxes were designed, was the way they were manufactured, or were they just not being monitored appropriately? We know there's going to be liability there. The question is, who all is it going to be on? Is it just on the train? Is it going to be on the company that manufactured the heat detection systems that weren't working properly? All of this is going to be sorted out, and it will be sorted out in trial. It will be sorted out in court. There will be experts that will be poring over this data to help us prevent the next occurring at all. Imagine what would have happened instead of this happening outside of a small, sleepy town in Ohio. It happened in downtown Seattle, or any other big city in America. It certainly could have. It could have happened anywhere. It just happened to happen there.
Yeah. Wow. This is powerful to know what could potentially come out of this. What do you think some of the regulation and changes that will come from this?
There's going to be a lot of regulatory changes, some of which are going to be directly related to what happened, and others are going to be related to changes that have needed to happen. Okay, you'll remember that we almost had a strike from a lot of the engineers, the train engineers, and part of what the unions were saying then is that these trains aren't safe anymore. This real efficiency push that we've seen over the last 6 or 7 years throughout the entire industry has left us at an extreme degree of risk. This particular train, the one in Ohio, only had 3 people on it, and the train was almost 2 miles long. Think about that. 3 people on the train that's 2 miles long. How are you going to even, how are you going to keep up with that? How are you going to keep that train moving safely when it's that big and that large? We also know that the time to inspect the cars has been radically decreased. Before the efficiency push 6 years ago, you had about 2.5 minutes to inspect each car when it was in the train yard before it left. Okay, the train employees did 2.5 minutes for a car that's about 100 feet long. That's not much time. Since the efficiency change, that has been reduced now to 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes. That's impossible. You can't possibly look at both sides of a train car that's almost 100 feet long in 1.5 minutes. So you can see what's happening here. These safety standards, they're there, but they're just being ignored. And I expect we're going to see a lot of those type of safety standards get reinstated, that they get enforced, essentially, because they know what they need to do. And many times they just need to force the company to follow the basic safety rules that are already there. But I do expect that we may see some additional changes, some additional safety measures that experts may have been even contemplating for quite a while, that simply had not made it across the finish line due to all the efficiency changes that we've seen in the last 6 years.
Yeah. Now, our Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, has been getting a lot of criticism. Do you think that's fair or no?
Well, that's not really his job, but because his job has the name of transportation in it, I mean, he's not the chief safety officer for that. Now, I do think that in that role that you have an opportunity to turn it into a role that has a bigger safety component in it. But for the last decades we've had that role, this has not been the primary job of the Secretary of Transportation.
Yeah, I mean, he came to East Palestine, recently, and some were saying, hey, this is too little, too late. You don't agree with that?
Well, it's one of those situations, and I'm not sure what good it would have done. Anytime a politician comes to a disaster, it's 8/10. It's almost all PR rather than anything that's truly effective. I'll tell you that this train derailment has brought attention to the problem that just hasn't really been brought to before, and it is drawing politicians of all stripes. I mean, we have well over 2,000 train derailments a year in the United States, 2,000 of them. And the fact that this one is one that's caught attention, I think, has mainly been because of the release of the chemicals and that massive cloud of the chemical waste cloud. Whenever they burned that thing off, that went 3,000 feet in the air, it was just horrifying to look at. You look at it, it looked like a nuclear explosion almost. And I think that's what's drawing attention to the problem. But now that attention is drawn to the problem, we've got an opportunity to make some needed fixes. And I hope that that's the end result of this, is that we get well-needed fixes, and that the people that have been harmed due to this release and those that will develop harm over the years are well taken care of because of it.
Yeah. What can we expect the rest of this week here in the situation?
I'm not sure what we can expect the rest of the week. I do expect that as time goes, that we will get more and more and better and clearer information about what all those root causes were that we talked about, and we may get some clarity on the changes that need to be made to prevent something like this from happening in the future.
Yeah. Lynn McCraw, really appreciate you joining us on Live from Seattle today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.